We're live?
Yes.
Okay, everyone, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under you. Sunshine notice, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Board of Commissioners Budget Workshop Meeting Wednesday, March 10th, 2021. The time is now 9:20. Pursuant to the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, notice of this meeting was posted in Tap into Nutley on March 3rd, 2021, and also published in the Herald News on March 3rd, 2021. It's posted on the Nutley Town Hall Bulletin Board and on the township website. A copy of this notice has been posted also in the municipal clerk's office. Due to the multiple executive orders declared by Governor Murphy and to prevent further spread of COVID-19 pandemic, all public meetings for the year 2021 will be held remotely via Zoom or teleconference. The public will be able to listen to the Board of Commissioners meeting and participate during the designated portion. I don't think they can participate, they can listen, but I don't think they can speak today.
No.
Commissioner Kelly,
Present.
Commissioner Evans,
Aye.
Commissioner Petracco,
Here.
Commissioner Scarpelli,
Here.
Mayor Tucci.
Here.
All present, Mayor. We also have Raymond Saronelli, Township Order from Nizhavachi and Company, John Mooney from Township Order as well from Nizhavachi and Company, and Rosemary Costa, CFO, Treasurer of the town.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
As the clerk stated, this is our budget workshop meeting, so I will turn the agenda over to our budget expert, Commissioner Evans.
Don't be so enthusiastic.
That was a great lead-in.
So good morning, guys. Ro, Sam, everybody. Listen, we've talked about the budget previously. I'll lead off with the fact is that the budget has, and I prepared a summary sheet for you. It's a single sheet, which you all should have. Okay. There's some things we'll have to fill in together as we move forward over the next couple of weeks, but that's the starting point. When you look at everything that's been submitted, the things that are going on in town, when you add it all up and you bring it together, the amount that we need to raise from taxpayers will increase based upon the initial budget submissions, $2,322,537, or a 5.5% municipal tax increase. It's municipal tax increase. It does not consider that there's also a school tax increase as well as potentially a county tax increase. When you look at that, we've had a slight increase in the average value of assessed home. So the net tax rate adjustment is 6.7 points, which translates, that amount translates into $218 on average per household. So a house that's assessed for $325,000 will see a municipal portion of their tax bill increase by $218. When you add in the school and the county, that number rises significantly, right? In order for us to reduce that amount, right, and get to, say, a 2% increase, we need to reduce this budget by $1.5 million. If we're looking at a 4% increase, we have to reduce it by $650,000. The reason that some of these issues have occurred is, I think, basically twofold. The most significant piece is losses in revenue. In order to get through the pandemic last year, we used a one-time revenue by reversing a tax appeal reserve for about $1.2 million. We've had for this year, the COPS grant expired, which is $158,000 worth of lost revenue. And we only can anticipate 85% of the aid we got last year, which reduces our revenue by $487,000. That's a variable right now that we can't predict where the state is going to go. But I am concerned this year that we may not get that uplift based upon the preliminary discussions that I've already had. So we have a significant revenue loss for this year. While overall the appropriations they're rising, but because of offsets, so lower medical costs, we've had some offsets to cover what I consider short or one-time costs associated with the redevelopment activities that are going on in town and some of the challenges that we face as a result of that. So those items are influencing this budget. The other is that this budget reflects an anticipated salary adjustment So those are things that are variable and changes that are overall level in our budget. Rather than discussing each department and what each department is doing up and down, we all know what that is, and you all can comment on your individual departments. But I thought this year when we went through it, that we would just look at an overall impact level so we know what the starting point is. We can dig down into each individual department as to adjustments in order to help us get it down. But the overall, this is what's going on in the budget this year. There are a couple items that are pending. One I mentioned, the state state aid. One of the things that has happened this year is that the state has increased our permanent aid by $1.8 million. There will be a reduction in our transitional aid as a result, but we now have, instead of having temporary aid, we now have 1.8 million of permanent aid that we can count on each year now versus having to negotiate $4 million of aid every year. We still have negotiations for TSA. The state has acknowledged that they will continue to give us the temporary aid, but each year they're going to be wanting to reduce it by 15%. So going forward, 85% of what we had the previous year will be in our budget, and that's the likely outcome until that is exhausted. We're still negotiating that now, so what those actual numbers are, but the principles around how they're looking at it, that's how they're looking at it, which is why I believe that the 487,000 of revenue that we got last year that we can't anticipate is suspect as to whether or not we'll get that this year, given the fact that they've already made the permanent aid adjustment. We are going to be negotiating with them further because we've already had discussions about adjusting the permanent piece further because we remind them is that Nutley is in the position of requesting at this point because of the decision to have the medical school on the Roche campus and the state's commitment to back us on that. So I'm not letting them walk away or forget about that commitment, which is what we're using to discuss the aid. One of the things that's become clear over time, when you look at transitional aid, as a town in need of aid, there are 326 towns in front of us who based upon the state's formula, are in greater need of aid than Nutley. So we fight with them and negotiate and very extensively because of the challenge that says our aid is premised on what's happening on the Roche site, not what's happening in town. Because while we have a need, there are other towns with greater need, and there's not enough money to satisfy everybody. So it just creates every year the negotiation strategy. The last thing that's pending, which is large, is that the House of Representatives is expected to vote on the Senate bill for the COVID relief package, which is $1.9 trillion. Embedded in that is the $340 billion for state and local governments, and that there is a portion of that that could come to Nutley. And we still need to figure out what that would be and how it could be used, which there are numbers out there, but over the next couple of days, we'll get clearer on what that number really is. But it could be money that could be used to offset any related COVID costs that we incur. Some of the reimbursement issues that we might have, given that the CARES Act has expired and FEMA's coming up for some money that's outstanding that we didn't collect. And there are probably other uses that are available to us. What I caution us on is that it's again, if that was an infusion of revenue, of money that would come to us in the form of aid, it would only come one time. So if it comes to us this year and we use it to offset operating expenses in this year's budget, we won't have that as an offset next year. And so it's the same issue as the one-time revenue we used last year to get through the pandemic, right? It would only just continue to increase what that challenge would be. So those are some of the macro things that are around our budget. We're coming up on a bond sale, which we hope we expect that we'll have a new bond, which will have a lower interest rate. So it'll reduce, we'll still stay at 10 years on our debt, but it'll reduce the average interest rate below the 2.5% that it's currently at, which is still a low rate, but I think we can get it lower. So anyway, you'll see all of that as you go through the budget. So in summary, we have a challenge in that we have to look for ways to reduce the budget. I'd like to have a discussion about what you think about the union negotiations and what we might need to do regarding a salary increase for this year. And if to the extent that you haven't considered that, right? You haven't considered that yet because of where it is, you'll need to notify me, before we introduce the budget, which we're targeting by statute to introduce on April 6th. So we have a little bit of a window to work through those things, but you'll need to get to me, what your thinking is around what the salary negotiations, the direction of where they're going. The reason why I ask that is that there's a potential savings associated with those negotiations for the taxpayers. I add on to it that, in the climate of 2020, we were fortunate in that we were able to collect our tax revenues and we were able to employ our employees and give and meet our contractual obligations for last year, which for many towns, they were not able to do that. So we didn't have to go into furlough days. We didn't have massive layoffs. We didn't have any suspensions and things like that. So we need to take that into consideration as we now look at the recovery that we need to go through in 2021. So those are overall comments. Ray, would you like to comment further? Would you like to comment further, Ray?
Yeah, well, I think you laid it out very carefully. I think what we talked about would be to maybe set a goal for introduction to get maybe halfway to the final budget that you want to adopt. I know it's going to take some time to sort out what additional revenues might become available or not, and what additional cuts might be in the budget. So I think a reasonable goal might be to get to 4.5% on this first go around and introduce the budget in April. And then you'll have some time as the state aid is sorted out and this where the transitional aid goes and any other cuts or revenues, because I believe your goal is probably to get closer to 2% eventually.
Eventually, I think it's I'm not sure we can get to that by April 4th, but it would be good if we can get to 4.5%, which means we have to come up with about $650,000 between now and April 4th to reductions. So
If I might, every Tuesday morning, we have COVID meetings, obviously telephonically, with the county executive and his staff, and also the congressional offices of both Mike Ishiro and Donald Payne.
And what I was informed of yesterday, actually, was that out of that $130 billion, there will be allocations for every municipality. So as soon as that becomes available, they will forward that to us. All right, Tom, I'll make sure that you get that.
Thank
And I know you already have a good handle on what that money can be used for. And again, it's a one-shot revenue, but these are peculiar times. So we need to do whatever we need to do to
Yep.
get as low as we can. All right. And I know it's going to be difficult. All right. And not so much from an appropriation standpoint, but from a revenue standpoint. The other issue I'd like to address is that Commissioner Scarpelli and I, while negotiating with the Teamsters Union, did not negotiate beyond 2020. So for 2021, pretty much everything is pending. And I know Commissioner Petracco did the same thing with public safety. All right. And of course, our non-union folks, pending whatever the outcome is of revenues coming from the state, from COVID or any other source. I know we've all worked very hard to realize economies and efficiencies in this budget. I know, just speaking from my department, I know everyone else did this also. We kind of, I don't want to say corrected, but we right-sized and placed people exactly where they belong. Okay, so that probably for the first time in a long time, people are exactly where they need to be, funded by whatever source is appropriate for that. So I know we typically plan not only for the current year's budget, but we project forward several years. And I know that's going to be a bit more difficult this year, but hopefully together, we can bring that back once we come out of this COVID fog.
Yes, absolutely.
Commissioners, any comments?
Mayor, just, with this past year's storms, we're already over budget on our snow budget. So I certainly will be in conversation with Commissioner Evans, see if there's any creative ways we could cover that deficit that we are already in without increasing the budget. And what I did is I projected what we spent. I didn't have exact numbers of what we spent on the storms yet, but I projected that increase. So maybe something that we could look at how we can decrease that number.
Mr. Petracco?
I just like to add, I'm hoping that the Biden administration sends Nutley our fair share, of course. And, I hope that helps us. I know there's a lot of moving parts with, the Roach property still as well. And, we'll do anything we can to be part of the team and get these numbers down, so they're affordable to everyone.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mayor. As everyone is aware, unless you've been living in a hole, we've been hit by COVID. And with the health department, that presents its own challenges and unique expenditures. One of the biggest hits was overtime, dealing with contact tracing. We tried to project that out so that way that it's budgeted for this year. In 2020, it wasn't able to be foreseen. But now that we're coming out of COVID, hopefully I'll be able to make some adjustments and we can kind of bring those projections down and lower the budget even more.
So overall, in revenue and finance, I'm dealing with roughly a $73,000 increase in our sewer costs overall for the town. Pension costs are up overall about $314,000, and that will continue to grow. The pension bill runs 2 years behind, so it's going to catch up to us even more so as we go forward. And then also I have the costs in there, the additional costs because of the redevelopment activities that are going online. So I have, and when you take those things out, my budget is actually moving, nominally. I have replacements that I need to work on. I'm currently trying to replace our payroll accountant. I have a spot in my clerk's office that has to be replaced, and evaluating upstairs. But we're going to be very careful about what we do in terms of manpower to continue to be conservative as we go forward. So we all, as we've all commented, we have to look for ways to pull some money and get this budget down. So overall, we have to achieve a goal of $650,000 by April 4th. In order to be ready on April 4th, it means that we need to submit our revisions to Roe and get them to Ray and his team by March 26th. That's a Friday. That's a very important date that none of us can miss because it's going to require time to get the budget through. I hope that in the next couple of days, the federal money will become clear as to what that's going to be. And over the next week or so, I hope to get greater clarity from the state as to what we might be able to expect for the coming year. By the way, to be clear, just because we've anticipated 85% of the aid we got last year, which is about 2.8 million, that doesn't mean we will get 2.8 million. It just means that that's allowed to anticipate statutorily. So I'm hopeful that with the federal money that's going to come through, that it will go to the state government, that we'll have better negotiations than we've had over the last few weeks. So we'll keep that open. So with that, that's what we have to discuss this morning. I think where Ray mentioned is I think we have to agree that we'll vote to introduce the budget on April 4th, but make no commitment about whether or not that's the budget we will adopt ultimately when it comes through, because we will have to do some work to figure that out. Okay.
Just to recap, in the Parks Department, we have reduced virtually every single line that we have, with the exception of one of the insurance lines, because we had a retroactive payment, and obviously group health insurance, while we continue to realize economies and efficiencies in that area, all right, continues to go up, because even when people retire, they don't necessarily come off of our books. They're just moved from the active column into the retired column. But we're down about $425,000. And some of the reductions were in fact painful. We moved some people out of recreation because of COVID. There was not a lot going on, so it was a logical thing to do. We have reassigned some duties. We've reassigned telephone duties that typically came into the Parks Department. Okay, and then we're fed it out to the other departments. So now they go directly to the other departments, and we continue to work on this budget. The mayor's budget is up a little bit. We've increased some of the legal costs, which as a result of the development going on 3 Ciccolini's, the pool club, we expect them to be reimbursable, or hope that most of them will in fact be reimbursable. So I think we're off to a good start. I think that the tone of this budget workshop is a correct one. It's not an easy one. All right, these are difficult accomplishments to realize, but I know together we've done it in the past, and I'm sure we're going to come together and do it again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just for the record, I think we should continue our trend of not adjusting the commissioner's salaries, since they haven't been increased since 1947. I don't think we want to break that record.
I would agree with that.
Right?
The hourly rate keeps going down, though.
McDonald's is like being the CEO of IBM. Yes, Ray, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to Commissioner Evans' statements on the revenue side, goal 1, to get the budget to a certain point for introduction, and then continue to work on it. I think he was optimistic on how quickly the federal government can get the money to the state, and how quickly the state government can allocate those funds out. I think you mentioned something like a couple of weeks.
To know what the number is, not to get it, but just to know what it is.
Okay, I hope that's the case.
Me too.
I'm guessing you won't really have clarity on what the number would be until after the introduction of the budget. And because the introduction date is statutory, I think it's appropriate to have that initial goal with the expectation that the budget will be worked on between the point in time that you introduce and you're allowed to adopt. Keep in mind, you're not allowed to adopt until the transition aid is determined. So that process has taken anywhere from 3 months all the way until October in a couple of years before your budget was adopted. And there's a lot of information still evolving on the revenue side. So I think the initial goal, if you could get that 650,000 put together some way by March 26th, you could introduce a budget with probably an increase larger than you would like. And that's only the initial step, knowing that it's going to go further
Fair enough.
down.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, so you know, after now that we've met, I'm going to be calling the BA for the school to find out where they are and apprise them of the challenges associated with the transitional aid, because there might be also monies that will be going to them for school aid that we're not aware of. So I'll be talking to them as well. That's it. I don't
I've already
have any-
had a couple of conversations with the board president and some of the board members. And we will continue those, and I'm sure we're going to be working together
Yeah.
to
Yeah, absolutely.
bring this all together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't have any other comments for, does anybody else have anything further?
I think we're good.
Then I think we have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Commissioner Kelly,
Aye.
Commissioner Evans, Commissioner Petracco,
Aye.
Commissioner Scarpelli,
Aye.
Mayor Tucci,
Thank you, everyone. Go ahead.
9:45. Just a reminder, you guys have the joint meeting tonight at 7.